Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Since morning, we have been hearing a lot about the flower trade, how the supply chain works, for example. In the initial keynotes, we heard about how the commitment or building the cold chain infra, for example. And also, we heard about in the first panel, what are the biggest trends. We saw some very interesting panel discussion happening there as well. And in the last roundtable, we heard some success stories. Now we move on to something very interesting, a very important subject in the flower trade, which is building the cold chain infrastructure for the African flower trade. Now, let me give you a small introduction. I joined Stat Media Group around 5 years ago, but I've never been part of this event before. Which means this is the first time I'm here in Nairobi. Okay, let me give you an idea about what I experienced here in Nairobi. First of all, Nairobi is cool. The climate, for example, it's really pleasant compared to where I'm coming from, Mumbai, or even though it is not as hot as other parts of India. Nairobi is really cool, particularly the mornings and the evenings. They are really, really cool. Now, that's one part of it. Nairobi is cool, so are the people of Nairobi. I came with my colleagues here, okay? With Renju, for example, she's heading this event from the marketing department, and also with Parag, who is doing the operations. I came with them 10 days ago, so I got some time to explore the city and meet some of the very important people here. So, for example, I was meeting the farmers, I was meeting the exporters, the aggregators, I was meeting the airlines, the ground handlers, everybody. One thing I noticed is how passionate are you guys about the industry, some of the associations, some of the people that I met talk about how they talk about the industry, some of the issues that you want to raise with the government or with the other stakeholders. I really feel that passion. So Nairobi is cool. The people are also really cool. But what we are going to discuss here is, we are going to explore here is, how cool is the infrastructure that supports the flower trade. For that, I have a very interesting composition of panel here. I have a shipper, for example. I have ground handlers. I have a representative sort of from the government side, from KFIS. I have also a perspective from Frankfurt Airport, bringing in a totally different perspective, in terms of building cold chain infra. Let me get into the subject right now. What I will do is I will divide this conversation into 3 different parts. First, we will discuss about the potential benefits of having good cold chain infra. Then we will talk about some of the challenges in building those infra. And then we'll also talk about the direction that we should be taking in the future. Now, make sure, this is a message to the audience. Make sure that if I miss something, make sure that you ask that question when there is a Q&A, okay? Be prepared for that if I miss some important subjects. So let me get straight into the subject, but I will give 2 minutes to each of the panelists to introduce themselves, in terms of who they are and the company they are coming from and their relation to this particular subject, which is about building the cold chain infra. Let me start with Rachel.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Levin, and welcome to Kenya. My name is Rachel Ndegwa, CEO Swissport Kenya. I represent Swissport in Kenya. Swissport has presence in 45 countries, and the 45 countries is across all the 6 continents. Coming to the topic of the day, why we are here today. Swissport is a ground handler. And in terms of handling cargo, looking at the mix, we do imports, exports. Imports about 20%, exports 80%. And out of the 80%, about 85% of that is perishable. So that explains why we are here today. Thank you.
Roland.
Yeah, good morning, or almost good afternoon. Roland Weil, working for the Frankfurt Airport. Frankfurt Airport is owned by a holding, Fraport, which operates 25 airports around the world. So for us, the facilitation of facilities in that case and supplying data as well as facilities to the supply chain and the stakeholders, the ground handlers, the ramp handlers. This is what we do. And although we are not present in Africa right now, I would like to help and share some knowledge and some background information that we have from the other airports for the supply chain here on the flower side, because we have the flowers on the receiving end in Frankfurt.
Thank you so much. Hilda.
Thank you, Lebin. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hilda Miraji. I work for Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service. That is KEFIS as a regulator, government agency. It's also the National Plant Protection Organization of Kenya. So we are saying in this case, before all logistics, we have to ensure compliance of this material that we are transporting through this chain so that we meet the market requirements on that side, where the destination is. When I talked to somebody in the morning, my friend there, Nick, he remembered that KEFIS, the police, and I wanted to dispute that when I saw this lady, the security lady that came in the morning to really explain the security measures and how you need to get out in case of emergencies. Then I said, I think I should be counted like that one. We are like the gatekeepers. When we ensure that we safeguard your products against the introduction of new pests from the other countries, and also you to access markets when you attain compliance. That is what we are. So we facilitate this industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilda. Praveen.
Good afternoon. My name is Praveen Singh, and here I am representing Black Tulip Group. And Black Tulip Group is engaged in the production of flower and export of flowers. And we are holding an area of 350 hectares, close to that. And indeed, it's a very interesting topic, what panelist has said, that infrastructural requirement or development needed for Kenyan floriculture industry. And as we all know that Kenyan floriculture industry is growing with a very good pace. If we see like 7-8%, which is a very decent growth. And after COVID, it has shown a very nice growth rate. It was above 10% in 2021, 2022. Because of lots of opportunity, because COVID was very positive for floriculture industry. So that was like an additional area to the floriculture sector in Kenya. So, and on the other side, when we see about the infrastructure at the farm level and at the receiving level, which is at the airport, that is also growing, but the pace is not matching, because we always have to remember that we have to plan ourselves for the, I don't say it worst time, for the best time, which is like Valentine, Women's or EUMD, where our volumes goes like in Valentine, the floriculture volume goes 3-4 times, 5 times more. This year it was, I think, 5-6 times more, because December was very down for Kenyan floriculture due to weather or climatic impact, where there was a lot of rains in the last quarter of the year 2024. So eventually a lot of production came to Valentine, and the volumes were very huge, and there was a lot of imbalance between handling the logistics at the airport to the final destination. So of course there is a very good room for the improvement in terms of infrastructure in the cold room. And as I got the opportunity to speak here, I will also like to add, floriculture is still fine, very organized sector in Kenya. And I always say that when it comes to floriculture, it's like Kenya is a developing country, but Kenyan floriculture is a developed country kind of thing, because here we produce natural flowers, not out of incubator. So when we see like in terms of sustainability, because this word was used today, from today morning, it's like 30-40 times. So we should be able to explain it more better. I'll try to explain it more better later in the session. But unorganized or small scale farmers are also facing a lot of challenge in terms of cold room infrastructure. Just to give you any statistics, Kenya, like, due to what I can say, the shortage of cold rooms, we end up throwing 50% of total onion production out of Kenya. Potato, we are able to throw 30-40% every year. So that's why the prices are fluctuating, like from 40 shilling, it goes up to 400 shilling. So it is like not the production challenges, it's the cold room infrastructure or the storage infrastructure. So these things also can be considered in this kind of forums and discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maina.
Good afternoon. My name is Maina Kio, General Manager Commercial. I'm here representing Misho Cotts, freight forwarder, offering end-to-end logistics in sea freight, air freight, warehousing, out-of-gauge, load freight. And specifically for this topic, we own an air cargo terminal as a transit shed at the airport where we handle both imports and exports. But most of the cargo we handle is exports and perishables in that nature.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me start by asking Rachel. Praveen already mentioned a few impacts of if we lack the adequate cold chain infrastructure, for example. He mentioned the impact on the economy. He mentioned the impact on people, for example, the food security. But from the flower perspective also, on the other side, you have some very good infrastructure. Your Nairobi, the facility, for example, is IATA's Sea Fresh certified, for example. And you have experience in building that cold chain infrastructure. Tell us about some of the benefits of building cold chain infrastructure and having that long-term vision of building that with the investment.
Okay. Indeed, in terms of the impact of the perishable into the markets, into the Kenyan economy, and not just Kenya economy. I think if I was to look around the other countries, Ethiopia, Uganda is coming up, Zimbabwe is also coming up, the impact is there in terms of the value of the exports, flower exports or perishable. I've had interesting statistics this morning from Kenya Flower Council, says it supports 4 million people in Kenya, directly and indirectly. But in terms of contribution is 1% of GDP. So yes, there is value in that. So from a Swissport perspective, in terms of investment, we have invested in infrastructure, we've invested in the process, and we've invested in people. Starting off with the infrastructure, our facility at JKIA, in terms of cold rooms, we have cold rooms. And recently, we did expand that by about 40%. And that was market driven, whereby the forwarding agents come to us, the airline, customer airlines, coming to us and saying, we need more capacity. So we're putting that to be able to support the airline, our customers, both the forwarders as well as the airlines. From a process perspective, we have then to challenge ourselves and ensure how are we handling the perishables. And that's why we did go for the fresh certification. And I must say, not just as a Swissport alone, but I must say even in terms of, if I look at the entire market, our competitors, there is a lot of investment in terms of the process, just to make sure that we are handling the produce, the farmers' produce, in the highest standards. But why is this? I think we are very aware that there is competition. Competition not just amongst ourselves, but within the region, but there is competition for the Kenya flowers out there from South America. So how do we ensure that Kenyan produce still remains competitive? And that's how then we decide to invest in the process so to ensure that the quality is up to standards. So one of the processes that we've done, we've put up a proper flower corridor. And when I say flower corridor, this is a facility that we ensure from the moment the cargo is received at our warehouse up until it's dispatched, that the produce is being handled in ambient conditions. And that's supported by the facility as well as the process. I mentioned people. We are a people business. I was looking around and seeing the banners, and I noticed that Swissport is around people. Because if we go wrong around the people, if we don't invest in the people, we don't explain to our staff why this is important, we could put up all this and still drop the ball. So that's in terms of people, training, ensure that they understand why are we doing what we're doing and the reason behind it. Ultimately, all this is driven by the demand upstream. And the gentleman who was there in the morning, he did say that the consumers have changed. The consumers' habits have changed. They become more demanding. They want, if I want to go to the market and buy a flower, I would want that to probably have a longer shelf life. And statistics indicate that, for example, a flower, if it's handled in temperature, let me say ambient temperature conditions, the vase life increases to 14 days, 14 days. So that's important to the consumer. So then that's how we come in and see how do we support that.
Can
Thank
I
you
ask
so
you a
much.
question? Is mainly the airlines booking your facilities, or is it the shippers that are booking your facilities?
The primary is the airlines. So we contract with the airlines.
Okay, because that is different in certain parts of the world. So sometimes it's when you go into Asia, then it's mandatory that freight is built up in the warehouse. That's not allowed in certain countries to build it up outside the airport warehouses. So that's of utmost importance that you have those facilities on the premises.
Thank you, Rachel, for those comments, and also thanks, Roland, for the questions came in. Certainly, to make the African flower trade competitive in the global market, we should be investing in the cold chain infrastructure. Let me go back to Roland now. You have years of experience in managing cargo, and you have seen many facilities. You have good experience in managing those facilities. You know about building cold chain infrastructure. Share some of your insights with us from your long career, for example. What are the benefits of that? Having a long-term vision, investing in cold chain infra, and what are the challenges in terms of when we have a lack of it?
Yeah, we are not operating these facilities. We have, for example, our managing director and his team is here of the Frankfurt Perishable Center. So you can ask him on the details later on or tonight or tomorrow. But we accompany the process of setting it up. And the Frankfurt facility is a 10,000 square meter facility. And then it includes veterinary inspections for the pharmaceutical inspections. It includes the phytosanitary inspections, and so all the customs, everything is there. Everybody is there. But we see the need for the importers to reach the facilities, to make use of the vacuum coolers, make use of the fast coolers. So basically, everything in the supply chain that extends the shelf life of the flowers. That's of importance because we see lots of truckings in all the airports that goes beyond reaching by air. So all that we assist basically, but the question is the funding. Of course, if you are setting up a perishable center, we're talking a lot of investment. So that is something that I don't know whether the airports in your country, whether they help or whether they just leave it up to the private investors to run those facilities like you as a handler. I don't know how that is done, but definitely we are, and that goes for all the countries where we are present. We are assisting basically with the setup of those facilities wherever that may be.
Sure, thank you. Let me go to Hilda now. You are an enabler in terms of. So what you do is in terms of making sure that the exports that is going out from Kenya are of good quality, right? That's the job KIFIS is having. And give me an idea about how cool is the infrastructure or the Kenyan Nairobi's infrastructure is handling all these flowers, for example, and your experience, your interactions with these stakeholders in terms of infrastructure development.
Oh, yes, thank you, Libin. I think for KEFIS, our main concern is that our exporters get the product that is as per the market requirements. So we have actually evolved as KEFIS from doing things manually, especially the certification process. we started doing the certificates manually. Now it went to electronic certification. Now we are at eFITO to fasten the process. And our main concern, of course, is that the products reach the destination that without the non-compliances, that's the harmful organisms. And of course, the documentation has to be right. So we have set up the right infrastructure, and we expect that even from the farms, we are trying to push that responsibility back to the growers, that they ensure the pest management are done at the field, so that we spend less time at the exit point. And we are doing that by building capacity. We are working with the industry, the fresh produce exporters, Association of Kenya, the Kenya Flower Council, to ensure that our growers meet the requirements so that we don't have delays in the process. And especially now that they've mentioned, of course, we are getting into sea freight. We have all our KFIS staff at regional offices. There are those who do the containers right at their farms. And we have facilitated that by ensuring that our inspectors get to the points of loading, and we do the inspections there, so that they don't have to go and they open up the containers at the airport or the port of Mombasa at the destination. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I can see that commitment, thanks for confirming that commitment to enable the trade and make sure that the exports going out of Kenya is of good quality. Thanks for that. Let me go to Praveen now. Praveen, you heard about now ground handlers, the enablers, talking about the cold chain infra here in Kenya, for example. What is your experience? How cool is the cold chain infra here in Nairobi or Kenya?
As I said in beginning, when we talk about the support infrastructure for floriculture industry in Kenya, it's quite advanced. I have visited the cold rooms for many countries and many places where I see Kenya is leading in terms of people on the ground, they also understand the protocols, the procedures, either it is when you are offloading your cargo or when it is handled by the aeroplane, of course there are certain limitations that you have to keep the cargo. I'm talking as a grower because at the end of the day, I'm representing the farm side. So there is always some issues that, the cargo stays on the tarmac for a couple of hours, then its impact on, final arrival to the other side. So that is something which can be reconsidered. I'm not saying that, it's very easy because the cargo or the planes have their own set rules that you have to bring the produce or the load near to the airport sometime back, before the loading. So this is a point which can be considered. Otherwise, when we see the whole transit chain, whether it is cold trucks from the airport to the cold rooms, they have nice vacuum cooled facility. I'm talking about the normal season. So it's quite good. So there is there is still room of improvement when it comes to events, because events are the time where, the volumes are many folds up. So there is still room for improvement. But overall, when we see the operational day-to-day basis, it's quite good, quite smooth from my point of view.
Yeah. Thank you, Praveen, for that feedback. Now, let me go to Meena. You heard all the panelists talking about the available cold chain infra. Now, Praveen talking about it's really good here in Nairobi. But give us an idea about where are the gaps left, for example, how your company is addressing some of them. Give us an idea about it.
Thank you. I think what we've seen as an organization, there is the customer demand-driven needs, where the customers are asking for particular services. And one of them, for instance, ourselves, we had to install a vacuum cooler because we realized the quality of the flowers in terms of transportation of the flowers from the farm to the warehouse in our facility. Maybe the management, the fleet that is carrying that flower is not conducive. So by the time the flowers come to our facility, they are not in the right conditions. So we had now to invest in a vacuum cooler to make sure that we moderate the temperature to the original state. By the time they are getting to the destination, they are on the quality they require. The other pressures we are seeing, which is also creating a bit of a gap, and an area of improvement is when you look at the customers abroad, the requirements are a lot of pressure and push for sustainability. When it comes to ESG compliance, certifications, policies, and all that, is where you realize as there's demand coming from that side, and that questions our capability, our state of readiness as far as that is concerned. And what we have done as an organization is to call out ESG as a significant piece because we want to add value to the customers in terms of the whole process and ask ourselves, do we have the right policies as far as the environment, social and governance is concerned? Do we have the right accreditations? Do we have the right certifications, for instance? And not only having them, are we living them? Have we trained our staff, for instance? Are we tracking? Are we monitoring? The other piece that we have seen as a bit of a gap and a challenge, technology. There's a lot host of track and trace, visibility people want to see. They want to see their flowers. When the flowers came to your facility, were you able to monitor the temperatures, for instance? And then if you are, can you demonstrate? And now we had to go in and invest in data loggers to make sure at least you're able to monitor the temperatures and make sure we have technology that can help us in terms of improving efficiency. In our facility, you come in, there is a bit that is human handled, and most of it is technology to ensure at least we are efficient in terms of our operations. So I would say from the customers and also the buyers on the other side, there's pressure coming, and which is questioning the facility owners and handlers whether we are at the level where the demand is required. And that calls for a lot of investment, whether it is in people, in technology, and also in the process.
Thank you, Meena, for raising two important issues. One is sustainability, the other one is the use of technology. Thanks for that. Let me go to Rachel now. Rachel, can you respond to these things, or can you confirm is that the kind of pattern that you see in terms of sustainability? That's one part. I want you to respond to that. I also look into the matter of challenges in building the infrastructure here in Kenya or Africa in a larger point of view.
Thank you. Let me start with the latter question, which is on the challenges of building cold chain facilities or infrastructure in Africa. The first one, I think in terms of costs. When we look at cold chain management in itself is costly. When I think about the farmers, they have to ensure that the flowers are pre-cooled before transit. And the farmers could be 200 kilometers out of the airport. They have to be transported. So who is going to invest in temperature-controlled vehicles? When you think about the facilities themselves, just to put up the panels, cold room panels, fortunately, we have to import. We have to import these panels. So that in itself, when you think about imports, then that tells you the cost goes up. But even just managing that, so cost in itself is very prohibitive. And the question is, who is willing to pay for this? And at what point it's being paid for? Because then will the farmer pay for it, or is the purchaser willing to pay for this? The second one that comes into mind is the people. I mentioned people. I think one of our biggest challenges is that we do invest in our people, but when you look at Kenya and the countries around, we have talent drain. We have countries, unfortunately, we see our people being offered maybe better terms, probably from the Middle East. So how are we able to retain that? Because these are people you have trained. That's a challenge in itself, because then they know how do we handle this. Then you have to go back to retrain people and the cost of doing that. And that's quite important for us to be able to maintain the standards. The other one is probably one of the basics, I think, when it comes to cold chain, in terms of simple things as the power supply. Is that consistent? Do we even have backups for that? And what's the cost of the backup? So that in itself, in this continent, is a challenge. And then that speaks into the sustainability. How do we then manage power challenges. I think for us, I must say that this is where the solar panels or alternative solar, alternative power comes into play. So you will find that most of the warehouses have solar panels. For example, at Swissport, we've had solar panels contributing 30% of our power generation since 2017. And we'd wish to grow that. And I've seen a lot of companies, there's a lot of engagement around what else can we do over and above the solar panels. It's just simple things as even improving the process from a sustainability perspective. I think when I joined cargo about many years ago, there was a lot of papers, a lot of paper. It was very, very paper oriented. But now seeing there's a lot of drive to do away with all this paper and automate and also recycle the paper that's been used. So you'll find now you have the mobile gadgets that we use to do the processes. Before that, it was all paper. So I can say that we've reduced the papers over the years, paper usage by about 40%. There's still room for improvement. But again, that same paper, we try and see how much of that can we recycle. So first question around ESG sustainability, that's an important, I think it's a core strategy in Swissport. And I can even tell you in Kenya as well, because you will go into meetings and the agenda is sustainability. I think since morning, this panel, we are still talking about sustainability. So that's a big one. And as I said, it's around the people, the processes, and the regulations. And we commit to that. I think there's a lot of commitment. There is a lot of passion around how do we leave the planet better than we found it.
Now we are getting deep into the specifics of those cold chain infrastructure. Thanks for talking about the cost involved in it, who will pay for it. It's a big question, for example. And then the specifics of the power supply and all those challenges, for example. I really want my audience to pay attention to some of these things. There could be other things that you may know. For example, I know there are a lot of shippers here who are not ready to come on stage. I really want to use, you guys to use the Q&A session and ask some of these questions to my panelist. Thanks for that. Now we're getting deep into this subject, building that. So it's like moving the flower from the farms to a reefer container or a warehouse, for example, and then to ground handlers and goes to ports or airports. It goes on. So in every single area, there are different infrastructure involved, and there are the specific requirements for all these components as well. Roland, can you give us an idea about how your experience has been in terms of handling the entire supply chain of some of these things, for example, making sure that all other stakeholders involved are also in line with what you are also trying to do as an airport, for example?
Well, sustainability is a kind of a buzzword, and we heard that several times this morning. And it goes from where is the energy coming from to charge a battery forklift or a ramp vehicle or a bus or a tow truck when it comes to solar panels. And the Swissport warehouse in Frankfurt is full of solar panels. Sometimes you wonder when the roof is going to come down because there's so many panels on there. But it's just a lot of, we are encouraging airlines to use low emission aircraft, considering that, and you see that in the world, sometimes the perishables are flown in elderly ladies for engine aircraft, which is pushing out a lot of exhaust in the back. So we're trying to bring down the number of engines in our airports. There's even some customers that say we are only using airlines that are using SAF or that are using solar panel or solar powered ramp vehicles and this and that. So it's a lot, and it's many buzzwords that you see, but it all comes together in the bigger picture. the question that we see is how long is the flowers in the heat between being harvested, being picked, and being delivered to the warehouse. We have to bring that down, to get the water out, get the vacuum cooler. Same goes on the other side. Then they're flown sometimes to smaller airports in the world, and then again being trucked another half a day to the destination. Is that good or not? It really doesn't fall into the big picture, but it's suboptimal in several areas. So there's room to grow, and there's a lot that needs to be done. But we're trying to get the full chain. We're trying to help the full chain and accommodate that full chain, whether this is charging stations for trucks, things like that. We even have a university program that is having a highway electrified for trucks to charge the 20 kilometers in and out of Frankfurt Airport. So there's a lot of that happening on that.
Thank you so much, Roland, for that, to getting into the specifics of some of these operations. Let me go to Hilda. You're a representative from the government side of it. For example, you are a regulator. You try to make sure that everything goes out is good in quality. But you must be having conversation with some of the stakeholders in terms of gaps out there, which can affect the quality of the flowers going out from Kenya. Give us a sense of what is your conversation with some of the stakeholders, and how you respond to them, and where are the challenges or gaps that you identified?
Yeah, indeed, there are gaps, and they are imminent, especially for those doing small-scale farming. My friend Ruth mentioned that she supports a number of groups, and I'm sure those groups would also want to transition to being exporters, and they make their own direct shipments. And the limitation, of course, is the infrastructure, as it has been mentioned quite often. The refrigerated trucks, they may not afford as exporters to have them right from their farms to be able to reach the export exit point in good condition. We have also seen others even transporting in pickups that are open. We had a country like Australia has very stringent requirements. They don't want any insect, crawling insect. And some of these insects, you may manage them right well at the farm level, but there are also others that are hitchhikers that can come on the way before you reach destination. So those are the gaps, and we are really talking with the industry if they can support. Like I know the EU supported the HCD to put up some cold stores somewhere in Limuru and in Mount Kenya. But that is just a tip of, a drop in the ocean. We want to see the same replicated in Western Kenya, Eldoret, as one of the speakers said, so that that cold chain is shortened, so that the material is able to reach at the exit point in good condition. So we are talking with the industry. They support from a few areas in the EU, the COLID in terms of capacity building, the TMA, that's TradeMark Africa. I'm sure they have some monies to support the industry. And those are the people we are talking to uplift the standards. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that commitment. Thank you. Let me go to Praveen. Praveen, can you give me an idea about, you have 350 hectares of flower farming here in Kenya. Give us an idea about if there is a percentage of that goes waste because of any, I don't know, any cold chain, a lack of cold chain, for example, infrastructure. It's not just Kenya for Black Tulip Group, for example. You're based in, the company is from UAE. You have your own presence there in UAE, and majority of these flowers goes to Europe. Give us a sense of how this moves through the supply chain, and if there are any gaps left where you think there are improvements required specifically.
As far as Black Tulip is concerned, that we are pretty much sorted with our cold chain infrastructure. When it comes to cold rooms at the farm or cold trucks, we are pretty much sorted, because it's like it's like a time when we are doing this business. So that is like we are not losing any percentage due to cold chain or any other limitations. Of course, like it's mostly when I remember during the Valentine times, there was very good demand in the market, but eventually there was no space from the airline side to ship it out, and there are some destinations which are very difficult to ship the produce. So there are certain times when we get a lot of limitations in terms of freight space, and it is mostly during the event time where we lose a lot of revenues due to availability of no freight or no show. So that is like one of the big challenge, what I can say in terms of cold chain. It is not directly from us, but it is from the other side due to non-availability. And in Kenya, we are still not, like, suppose if this year also, when early production came, mostly like 50-60% of Kenya was having early production during Valentine. Same has happened in Ecuador and Colombia, but they were able to keep the flour for many, many weeks, whereas in Kenya, that was a limitation. So that is like something which we can work it out. And it is not directly the cold chain, but there are n number of factors which are involved, where people, panelist has already said varieties or, the other infrastructures which was needed. So which we can work it out. And as we were discussing, like, our competition, Kenya is, I think, in more competition with Ecuador, Colombia, rather than I put to Ethiopia, because I think Kenya stands in a better position for floriculture in comparison to Ethiopia. Now our main competition is with Ecuador and Colombia, where they are able to store their flowers, even, like repeat flush of Valentine, for example, and the market is down. That is the time where Kenya gets lot of hit when it comes especially to the red roses, and this is very practical because I can see a lot of growers are also here. So you can see the hit of that return flush. You do break your flush, you do a number of things, but still you get some good numbers of flush return back. And due to like storage facility or logistics or whatever it is, we are facing that percentage loss to our business, which can be converted like the way Ecuador and Colombia is doing. And they are doing it pretty nicely. Like as far as I am informed, their Valentine was very, very early this year, and they were able to sell everything. Every possible stem they have sold out from their farms due to their better infrastructural support which the farms has. So that is something which we can work it out.
Okay, thank you, Praveen. Certainly, we need to look into that aspect as well when the volume goes up, for example, during Valentine's Day or now the Mother's Day coming up. So flowers is something that we can't use as such or consume. It gives us a pleasure, a beauty, a part of life, all of our life. Now, let me go to Amina. Give us an idea about how you handle some of these spikes during Valentine's or Mother's Day, and is there any challenges that you face or gaps left there?
What we normally do is, because we work with airlines and we also work with the exporters, and what we do is sort of like a demand forecasting for them, so that we know what volume are you going to export. And with that, now we're able to negotiate with the airlines and ensure there is space for them. Because if the space is not secured, then there's a possibility of off-roads for those flowers. And as a result, it will be an expense to the exporter. So that visibility, working very closely with the exporters or our customers to understand what volume are they going to export. This is a Valentine. Work ahead of time to understand that in the next 2 weeks' time is the kind of volume that we'll be expecting. So how do you work on it with the exporter, with the other value chain players to ensure that there's no off-road, that we secure the space? Because if we don't secure the space, there will be an off-road, and finally that's a loss to me as a client. I lose a client, and then of course the customer will lose the revenue. So that's one of the areas that we've seen. And also what we've also done is our facility, not only do we work with mainstream airlines, we also work with the charters. Some areas we have realized because of this demand planning, some of the exporters who are capable, they can charter for their flowers. Some of them at that point, especially when the spike is high, they don't mind the cost per se, as they want their flowers to arrive on the other side. So we work with a number of charter, and we negotiate ahead of time that I can guarantee you X volume, let's negotiate the price. And with that, I'm able to pass on a better rate to my customers and secure booking with the charter. So working with the airlines, the exporters, working with the charter, we're able to provide a solution, as long as you have focused the demand ahead of time.
Thank you. So we have already covered two, at least, important part of our panel discussion. One is the potential benefits of building cold chain infrastructure, and also try to explore the challenges in that area in building this infrastructure. Now, let me go to the last one, but maybe we'll try to quickly finish it. I know it's already 1:30. Well, most of you will be hungry also. So we'll try to quickly finish that. We'll try to look into the future right now. What I'm expecting is quickly to give us some insights about where we should be directing our energy right now in terms of building this cold chain infrastructure. Rachel, you have something called the flower corridor, for example. Give us an idea about what led to that initiative and what is the future.
So the flower corridor is, as I said, it's more or less looking into the future, but it comes from discussions and discussions with various stakeholders. It's looking and seeing from a farmer's perspective, from a forwarder's perspective, from a purchaser's perspective, from an airline perspective, what are the pain points? And looking to see how then do you address the pain points that are being experienced by all these parties. Because the flower corridor, we say it's from the farm all the way till to the markets. And what we're trying to do, as I said, is ensure that the cold chain is maintained. Consistency. The consistency is very important, because I can imagine if one person along that chain drops the ball, it has an impact it has a ripple effect. So then how do we work together? So there's a lot of collaboration around the flower corridor. It's around sharing of information, because then we have to be open. We have to do the temperature mapping, be able to track that. So at least then we're able to see where did we drop the ball, come back and review, and probably see how then do we address that situation. So that at least then going forward that we're able to ensure that it doesn't happen again. It's also tied to thinking around what do you do when things go wrong. So today you had planned for a flight, the flight is cancelled. It happens. The cargo is already at the tarmac. What happens? What do you need to do to be able to still preserve that? And Maina talked about the vacuum coolers. The flower corridor includes a vacuum cooler. And that, in a way, looks at what happens if things go wrong. That you're able then to bring back the flowers to the warehouse and bring down the temperatures. It's also working together with all the stakeholders. I think that's maybe the point I'd want to highlight. There's a lot of collaboration, there's a lot of information sharing, there's a lot of best practice sharing with all the stakeholders along the supply chain.
Okay. Working together is definitely an important part of it, collaboration. Even Maina was also talking about on the same subject. Roland, can you give me an idea about what are the new things, new trends that you see? You have a Perishable center, for example. What are the trends that you see there in terms of developing this cold chain infrastructures? Is there anything new that your colleagues delve into, for example, in building these things?
I wouldn't say there's new trends, but it's basically everybody's working together in a collaborative effort. So you mentioned flights being cancelled. So we want to make sure that if a flight is cancelled, that we'll find a substitution for that the products are not stuck in a warehouse, that they go to the destination. So the local players at the airports, they work together hand in hand, basically helping, and then it's not even a competition issue anymore. So it's just everybody helps out. That is the key, and that is the reputation that you're getting as an airport then. So basically it's almost seamless there's no temperature diversions, and there's no flaws in the process. So that is the confidence that the shippers need, and that's what we want to give them. That no matter what happens, you feel safe and your goods are going to be moved. So it's there. Every now and then there is new ideas coming up, and then mainly in the air cargo communities, it is discussed with all the stakeholders that are there at the airport, being it the handlers, being it the truckers, being it the shippers, being it customs even, veterinaries and all those. So that is something where we see a big success with these cargo communities, and especially with ours. That is kind of helping. It's really everybody's pulling at the same string, and it's just the fact that the product has to move. That's the driver behind it.
Definitely, technology is enabling us to collaborate more with these old platforms. Thanks for that. Hilda, can you give us an idea about where the other stakeholders that you're involved with should be channeling their energy in terms of building the infrastructure, the cold chain infrastructure, so that we can make your life better or easier, for example, in terms of the job that you have?
Thank you. I think with the stakeholders working together towards building the cold chain, it will make our work easier, especially like if they are from one region and they say they are going to use like now the port of Suswa, and they put together their energy and of course the infrastructure working towards the same goal. We'll be able even to station somebody who is like an inspector in that region, that station of Suswa, and then of course that will move the goods faster. And the one thing that I'm happy about this cold chain for the future, we already have like a phytosanitary treatment, cold treatment for avocado for South Africa. So I'm believing like, the most challenge that we have is non-compliance, interceptions of our cut flowers in the EU, and the rejections at the airport due to, of course, the harmful organisms. And I want to believe maybe we don't have the data yet because we have not moved volumes, but for the future, especially because of the cold chain and the time it takes to reach destination, some of these pests that you hear of, like those who are exporting, false codling moth is a thorn in the flesh. I think we'll get rid of some of them through this cold chain as a treatment for the pests. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Praveen, quickly, what is your message for some of your service providers or the logistics service providers in terms of the future, where we should be focusing on, because from a shipper's point of view?
I think as said in the past also, we have to prepare ourselves for the high seasons, for the events, because mostly the major part of the business is happening during those times. So we should be making sure that we should not lose any opportunity due to limitations of cargo, due to limitations of holding capacity at airport, or some other issues where the flowers are ready to be exported, but there are some other limitations which are happening, which is like basically the space, because many times we've been told that, because as we said that we hire the charters, we also do hire charters during the events, but what happened, like last moment cancellation of the charters also happens, which does impacts a lot of business to the grower, because they say due to they didn't got the permission or there are some other issues, so which does impact. So as an association, we have to make sure that we are well prepared for the events, to make sure each and every stem is shipped out of the country where there is good demand, so we should take advantage of that time.
Thank you. Meena, what is the future looks like for you and where we are heading?
I see a future where we'll have, for us to raise the bar as far as the cold chain is concerned, I see a future where we'll have a better public-private partnerships, better coordinated multi-stakeholder approach, so that all of us today, if you as the private sector, as the government, are we having the same shared vision? Is our picture of success the same? Number two, when it comes to the costs, the cost for technology, the cost for standardization, the cost for ESG, for instance, is heavy. And what is happening is every value chain player is doing it individually and singly. Is there room for us to put our heads together and see how we can reduce those costs? Especially when I look at the small-scale farmers, some of them cannot meet this kind of costs that are being asked for, which impact their product and affect their selling and affect their revenue. So is there a way all the stakeholders can come together and see how can we reduce the cost of technology? Because it is mandatory we need to have it. How can we reduce the cost of the regulations that are required? Can we have a better approach together as a team? So I see a future where if that is done, we'll be able now to address and raise the bar as far as the standards are concerned, raise the bar as far as the quality is concerned, and of course, we'll be able now to expand our markets. I would also see a future where there will be incentives for people who are raising the bar and investing. If you have invested in the cold chain, what is the incentive? Are there tax reliefs that you can get? Because I've gone ahead and I've invested in a cold chain. I've invested in this technology because at the end of the day, anybody who is doing these activities for the value chain, you are also contributing to the economy. Where does the government come in to give incentives so that people can actually invest more as far as this area is concerned? Do I get an incentive for training my people to the highest level? Do I get an incentive for raising my standardization, my compliance to all these ESG? So if you can have incentives, you'll have more people now pick up and invest in these areas.
The importance of having incentives. Thank you so much for that. Unfortunately, we don't have much time to delve into that topic, but that's a very important topic. We also keep in our mind. Maybe we can continue build on this conversation through our writings, stories, in other in the conferences that is coming up. So just opening this to quickly opening it to Q&A. If there is any questions, quickly we can take.
My name is David Armstrong from Wilfred Express Cargo, based at Wilson Airport. I have a number of questions. I think I'll put it into about 3 key areas. And most of my questions are going to Rachel and Maina. The first question that goes directly to Rachel, you mentioned that so far Swissport have managed to invest about 30% in terms of energy consumption, whereby 30% is done by solar. But again, we also know that the amount of energy consumed by cooling facilities may go to up to 80%. So my question is, and it's more on the future, are there any sort of investment in research in as far as developing a zero net sort of a coal facility is concerned? Is Swissport investing in any research to ensure that in the future the coal facilities that we are going to have are going to meet environmental friendly standards? Then this also goes to you and to mine as well. You work with the different stakeholders, the airport, individual importers, freight forwarders, and that one means there's a massive data that you people interact with. And now, based on the AI and everything that is happening, I'd like to know your data consumption strategy or framework. Then the last question is on the risk framework, because both of you mentioned that in the daily operations, there are things that happen which are not anticipated. So in your daily objective and considering the other stakeholders, what are the risk framework that you people continue to improve and access to ensure that importers, especially people dealing with perishable products, are not affected? Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Armstrong?
Armstrong David, yes.
Okay, thank you for the questions. Going to the first question around what else are we doing about the 30%? So one, as a company, as Swissport, we are committed to net zero carbon emission by 2050. So that's something that we are very intentional about it, very deliberate about it, and it's driven from our head office. I must say, from our head office, from the group CEO. So it comes from the top and their targets. This will not be achieved in one go. We're giving ourselves time and being practical about it, and seeing how then do we achieve this. Solar is one example. Our aim is to, how can we increase more of our power production, and we're using more of the solar. We're in the tropics. We look at 10 months of the year, we have solar. So how much can we drive around that? So that's one of the agenda, but not just the solar. We also look at what other initiatives do we have. So in the warehouse, just to give you an example, we use, when I look at the equipment at the warehouse, we do not use any diesel. We don't use any diesel at the warehouse. And that's still tied to sustainability. And there are a couple of other initiatives, 1-2%. I'll tell you, during the day for us in the warehouse, we do not have the lights on. So we've put in panels, or let me say roof panels, that allow the natural lights to come through, so that you don't have to use power. So it's around savings, the energy saving initiatives that you can undertake. But when we look at the ESG, the sustainability, it's just not around, I think we look at it from different aspects. So part of it is the savings that we can bring on board. But again, people comes in. We have to look at our people. How do we ensure that in this market, in the cargo industry, we still have people, the young people will be able to work in this industry? How do we ensure and retain them? How do we motivate them to stay within this industry and help us grow this industry? Because I do believe there's potential. There's a lot of potential when it comes to this particular industry. So how do we then have our people around that? And it's both male, female, because we need both parties coming on board and supporting that whole initiative. So as I said, it's a process, it's a journey, but there is commitment, and we're very, very intentional about it. So we start small, the 1%, the 2%, 3%, but I do believe then you build on that, and that's how we get to the 2050 target. Your second question, before I let Maina respond, you did talk about the risks. How do we then support the industry when it comes to any risks thereof? What have we done? As I said, we don't work alone. I think when we were putting up the facilities and any improvements that we've undertaken in the facilities, we have conversations with the various stakeholders from the airport, interesting enough, from the farmers, from our airline customers, from the forwarders, and we look and see what are the challenges. And we've mentioned a couple of the challenges. I think we did talk about infrastructure. There are times the truck leaves the farm in the morning, supposed to come to the airport, as I said, 200 kilometers out, and there's traffic on the road. So how do we support on that? So we build facilities that allow cargo to be fast-tracked. We have a BUP fast-track lane, such that we have timelines. We do have the timelines because we have to work with the airlines and ensure that this cargo gets onto the aircraft on time. But how do we support that process? And we've built facilities to be able to support that. I talked about the cold rooms. We expanded. And part of that expansion is we have to think about what will happen when things go wrong. Are we able to accommodate our customer airlines if we have 2 flights that have been cancelled? Are we able to accommodate that particular cargo? So we have to build facilities and build capacity to be able to support the market. But even from a process perspective, our process efficient? Are we supporting you? Are we sharing this information? So from a risk perspective, I must say that we are working behind, or we're working backwards, and we are happy to listen. I'm not saying that we are there yet. I still believe that we still have a long way to go, but we are happy to listen and probably see what other improvements can we have on board in order to address your pain points?
Okay, as far as we more or less work in the same terms of the energy consumption. We have also installed solar panels, and we also do produce about 30% of our consumption is through the solar panels in our air cargo terminal. What we've done is we are very deliberate as far as the ESG is concerned. And what we did is to even go ahead and register our targets with the Science-Based Target Initiative, so that we are very particular in terms of what is our end game as far as the net zero is concerned. So we want to hold ourselves accountable. We have published the targets, and we have a roadmap, including a strategy on how we are going to achieve the targets by the year 2050. And alongside that is to ask ourselves in terms of equipment, we are removing all the diesel-powered forklift, and we started replacing them with electric, so that we are on that journey. So I would say we have a very clear roadmap as far as ESG is concerned. We have published the strategy that we are monitoring, and we have also published the targets that we want to be held accountable. As far as data is concerned, we harvest a lot of data from the time cargo comes into our facility. And the phase we are in as of now is analytics. We are developing capability for analytics for data to see what is this data telling us, and what information and value can we give to our customers as far as the data that we have harvested is concerned. We are investing, and we are in partnership with a couple of partners going to develop capability for predictive. The area of AI is one area that we have called out to, so that we can see how do we help our customers based on the data we have from a predictive point of view, that we can tell you from maybe for the last 2 years we have worked with you, these are the patterns and the trends that we are seeing, and we can add value as far as that conversion is concerned. So we have harvested, we are on the analytic phase, and then we'll be moving to predictive, and we are working with the partners to develop that capability. As far as risk is concerned, what we've done is we have a robust risk framework, and we have called out all the risks around people, the risk around security, the risk around quality, the risk around handling of cargo. And what we do is to ensure that we have SOP, standard operating procedures. We have called out KPIs, and they are measured periodically to see to it whether we have met the KPIs or not. Most of the airlines that we do work with, they have their own KPIs, and we review together to see to it whether were we green, were we red, where do we drop the ball, and where do we need to improve. So I would say we are on a journey in terms of risks are concerned, but the framework helps us to see to it that at least we have called out the risk, and we monitor, and we see where the gaps are and how do we improve going forward.
Thank you so much. We have to stop it here. I know there are many people who wanted to ask questions. I have seen some hands going up, but we have to stop it here. Thank you so much, everybody, for that. Thank you so much, each of my panelists, for being here. It was a wonderful panel. There were many things that we discussed. I don't want to go back to any of them, but one key thing that is collaboration that everybody mentioned, then we need to work together to build the right cold chain infrastructure for Africa's flower trade to make it competitive in the global market. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much.
All right.